Right, this is your ghosty video. Now, I'll tell you why it's taken a while for me to do this, and that's because I lived in this property for 5 years between 2014 and 2019. And within that time, lots of little things happened, but there wasn't one major story that would take the entire video. So I've been battling with myself as to like how to even do this because like one story is not going to be long enough for a video, but all these multiple stories are going to be too long for a video. So I've been trying to figure it out on how to do this, and I think the best way is to take you back to the start in this video. So this will be the premise as the start of this series if we decide to do more. And this video will concentrate on in 2014 where I moved to the property. I will show you the house and we can get a little bit of a backstory first, and then maybe I'll tell like one story in there. If I can get two in, that'd be great. And if you would like more, because there is obviously multiple mini stories, then I can just progress onto this series and maybe do like 2 to 3 stories per video, because I don't want them to be super long, unless you want longer videos. I don't know, you'll have to let me know in the comments. So, with all that being said, go and get yourself some snacks, some beverages. Probably best to watch this at night time because it gives a little bit more of an effect, right? But pause the video, go and get what you need, come back, and I will tell you the beginning story of the haunted cottage farmhouse that I used to live in for 5 years. Okay, has everybody got what they needed? Settled in? Good. Let's begin. So, as I said, 2014, myself and my then partner, which we will call John for the sake of this video, to make it easier. So me and John are looking for somewhere to rent privately, and we looked at the estate agents and there was a lovely little house available which was 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom, big old back garden, quite a decent sized front garden, and it was a fairly old house which was a cottage. So there was exposed beams, there was character, it was, you know, it was old, it was lovely, it was something that myself and John really wanted. So what we did is we ended up moving into this house. So to note, this house here used to be one cottage. It's now been separated, as you can see here, into 2 cottages, and the one we resided in was this one here on the left. Okay, so fairly decent sized front garden, private road down here and down here, so not many people at all, and then a huge back garden which stretched probably down to where that pole is and a little bit more, maybe 3-4 foot after that pole. There was a river that ran down that went all the way through, I can't remember what river it was, but that ran down, and then there was farm and field opposite to here, and that was where the landlords lived, right? So this was really new to me and John because I'd always rented privately and just sent it, you know, through the bank or something like that. Well, this was different. We paid £625 in cash every month to them at their house. Some months we even collected next door neighbour's rent and took up the money, right? So every month we would do that and it'd be written in a book and everything like that. But for me, that was just something different, okay? So I just put that out there. They were farmers, the landlords, they were farmers. So they lived here, right? So where the farm was, they then lived there. So 5-minute walk, yeah, from our house. So another thing to note, which is quite funny, is if you just take a note of these dates down the bottom here, this is obviously, you know, Google Map and Google Street View. Now, 2014 is when we moved in and 2019 is when we left. None of those dates are here. None of them. It's like we never existed in that house. It's very strange. I know that 2012 and 13 aren't there, but I'm pretty sure that there used to be my red Audi sitting on that driveway with a picture. I could be mistaken, but that's just something to note there, that as I went to go and get you the exact picture of the house, and what it looked like when we moved in, I can't, because it physically isn't there. So this is the living room, and this was the, oh my God, I'm trying to think now. Is that our bedroom? No, the bedroom was at the back. So this was the spare room. So this was the second room. Yeah, of course, because that's the spare room. Yeah, so the cottage was mirrored as well, okay? So the living room here was the same as the living room here, right? The dividing wall that separated myself and my neighbour, it was mirrored. So where our fireplace was here, her fireplace was obviously on the same as well. And then living room, right? So it was a mirror image of each other. And it was lovely. You know, we moved into this place and there was nothing really that happened for the first couple of weeks, I'd say. And I was really excited because I love old houses and I love old, character and things like that. And something important to note is that I've never really experienced like any ghost sort of activity. I haven't. The only thing I've experienced is intuition. That's it, right? I have a story on my channel where I spoke about intuition, and I only have really like 2 or 3 other stories that go with intuition. So before moving into this house, I wasn't under any preconceptions that, oh, it could be haunted, oh, it's an old house. There was never anything like that. I never ever thought of it. So when John, so something to note is that John was, probably still is, I don't really know, to tell you the truth. I'll just be honest and say what it is. When he'd had a couple of drinks in the evening, it's like he became more susceptible to energy around him and feeling and seeing things and just being able to tap in, I guess. I thought I was, tapped in, but like, no. Because after living there for the first couple of weeks, everything was all fine, everything was all great. But then John turned around and said to me, I get a feeling that there is a spirit that resides, pretty much sits in that corner over there, and pointed to the living room corner, pretty much where you would come in at the door, and then the corner here, pretty much. And he said, I feel that this spirit is like a house spirit, so like he maybe used to live here, like, and that made sense because this house is very, very old. Okay, this house before, let's go back to it, this house before it was these 2 houses for myself and my neighbour to live in, this was one house, but it was a farmhouse. So all of this and the land and the landlord's house that I told you was all connected, bar the river. Okay, so they owned all of this land, and so it was a farmhouse where the farmers stayed, but they also had their staff stay as well. Okay, so there was a lot of people that lived in this house at one time. So I said to John, that makes sense, and he said, yeah, but I get a strong feeling that his name is Charlie. And I sort of sniggered and was like, Charlie, what kind of like old name is that? You'd expect like Edward, or something like that. But no, he straight up was just like, I don't know, I just get the feeling that his name is Charlie. Well, the next day we decided to look into the house a little bit more, in detail. And so we put in the address of the farmhouse, not this, because this address was actually a cottage address. Even though it was the same property, we knew that it was a farm address. So we looked into the farm address and we looked on the census, right? And sure enough, Charles was the farmer in this house with his wife, Sarah, I believe, and their children. And then they had farm workers, so a labourer. They had a wet nurse, which I didn't know what that was until John told me, but it was basically like a person to help with like the baby. I don't have kids, so I'm really sorry. I don't know the terminology, but it was like a nurse to help with the kids, like, and she would stay there. So they called it a wet nurse, I believe. So all these people were listed on the census of having lived here. And when we saw Charles, I looked at him, he looked at me, and he went, okay. And I was like, You know what I'm saying? Like, at that point, because when someone says something to you, you're just like, yeah, all right, cool, yeah. But when I saw Charles, I literally looked at him and was like, yo, what the fuck? And he kind of thought that as well, okay? So that was the first, like, weird instance that happened, is that he picked up on the fact that there was this male spirit who lived in the house before and was just kind of watching us or making sure that we were, like, looking after the house, I guess. So something to note is that I never really experienced as much as John did, and I don't know whether that's because obviously he was like more susceptible, but I experienced a small amount. But I'm going to put in both of our stories into this series. I've asked him as well. I said to him, look, yo, is it alright? I still talk as friends, so I said, is it alright if I like do this? He was like, yeah, don't forget this, this and this, and he was reeling off a couple of things that I had personally forgotten, and one of those things was that we had a council lady have to come over for some reason. I honestly can't remember. I'm gonna have to ask him what it was just for my own memory, because the house was privately rented, so it's not like, the council coming to check it or anything like that. But for some reason the council needed to come. Maybe it was like checking something. It was something to do with the landlords, and they had to do something or whatever. And this council lady came in, and she said, I'll have to get the message up just to remind myself. Right, so I've just gone back onto my messages because we were talking a couple of weeks ago about this, and I was like, yo, is it all right if I like talk about it? He was like, yeah, we were going over some things, and here is a screenshot. Don't forget the woman from the council too, who came over and stopped as soon as she walked in and said about the energy. So that's another thing. She literally came in and stopped and was like, there's a weird energy around here, which was super weird, right? Because how do you walk in as a council lady, right? How do you walk into someone's property and then tell them that there's weird energy about, like, unless these people that you're talking to are going to be susceptible to that, they're going to turn around and go, what the fuck are you talking about? Just come here and do your job, right? But she felt okay to say it because I guess she felt we were okay, which we were. And then that sparked a conversation between John and the council lady saying, funny you should say that, actually, we looked into it and there's a gentleman here called Charles. And she also said, I also did feel it was a male figure and she pointed in the same direction and said that sits over here. And he's a good energy. It's a good energy. It's just there is an energy there. So that's just a weird thing, a little weird coincidence that linked up pretty early on to us moving in. Another small thing that is a coincidence that kind of links to that is that within a couple of weeks / maybe 2 months, we started being visited by a random stray dog. It was so strange, right? So we had a back door in the kitchen, which is like a normal plastic back door, right? And one day we just heard like scratching on the back of the door. And all our dogs are in, right? We had 2 dogs at the time, I believe, yeah, because we didn't have Aurora. So we had 2 dogs at the time. Both the dogs were in. And we were like, what is that? Because we didn't have no chickens at the time or anything like that, right? We had barely just like moved in. So I remember, because later on in life, I had like farmyard animals and that. So it was nothing. Absolutely nothing. And we opened the door, and this cute, scraggly, little terrier type dog just comes bowling in. Like he owns the place. Literally. Our 2 dogs come out. Marley doesn't really give a fuck, to tell you the truth, about him, but this dog is interested in Marley. The other dog that we have, Bo, is interested in this dog, so it was all a bit of a kerfuffle when this dog decided that he was knocking on the door and we let him in. Anyway, cut a long story short, it says on his little collar, because we managed to grab him and be like, who are you? Are you stray? Like, what's going on? Turned round, grabbed his collar, and it said, hi, my name is Charlie. Can't make this up. My name is Charlie. I live down the road at the church. If you find me, please bring me back to here. I like to go on walks. I'm like, sorry, what? Like, I completely am just like, I spin my noodle. Like, what are you talking about? How is there a stray dog that's not a stray dog that's allowed to walk on its own that has just knocked on the fucking door? And so we look at the address and we realise that it's literally down that road, right? Down that road. a little bit, about a 5-minute walk, and there is the address there, right? So, so we get the dogs, we get the collar, we have a spare lead as well. So we grab a lead, we put it on this dog Charlie, and we walk down to that address. And we knock on the door, and I'm like, this is so weird. Like, I felt so weird, like, I really did. But John's like, what else do we do? Like, it says to do that, so let's just do it. So we knocked on the door, and we're like, is this your dog? They're like, yeah. And they just acted so blasé. They're like, yeah, it's Charlie. Oh, thanks for bringing it back. And we're like, right, we've just moved in down there. Like, what's going on? And basically, it turns out that this dog just lives in that house. He has an owner. The dog lives there. The dog's very old as well. But he's full of beans. And he literally takes himself from where he lives, will go all around, all the way down to the village, into the pub, where people will, love him and give him love. And then he'll walk back on his own back home. But if he doesn't walk back on his, or if he gets found or something like that, people find him, the address is there for them to just like bring him back. But he will find his way back. They were like, he will come back. He will find his way back. So we gave back the dog Charlie, and that wasn't the last we saw of him. It was not the last we saw of him. That motherfucker, I used to have a video. I might have to find it. I'm just, if I can, I'll insert a video here. But he would knock on the door, literally scratch on the door, and we'd open the door and he'd come bowling in, and then our dogs would be like, yay, Charlie. Like, it was crazy. And it kind of felt like a homage to Charles that was there. Like, it was weird. I know it's weird as hell. So basically, we have a spirit in the house that used to own the house, used to be a farmer, and he is just there, very, very prevalent, right? The last thing I'm going to say within this is that for the full 5 years that I lived there, I didn't personally feel like I experienced anything poltergeist, okay? Because nothing got thrown around the room, no light switches were turned on or off, and no doors were swung open. But this little cute story is all nice and dandy, but there are some situations that happened that I look back now and I think, I wonder what that was, because that wasn't a nice energy. And it happened multiple times. It seemed to be a certain female energy. That was my fridge. I don't know if the mic picked that up, but that was my fridge. Oh, that was weird. Why did you have to do it at that moment? So it does get worse from here on, but I wanted to just take you along this story from the beginning, just so that you could kind of be where I was. Just as we moved in, there was, very little energy, but the energy that was there was very cool, calm, collected. But throughout the years, it wasn't just that spirit that was there, and it was quite painfully obvious at some points. There are certain stories that I have that I will tell you right now, if it didn't happen to me, I wouldn't believe me either, okay? If you told me that whatever happened to me, if you told me that happened to you, I'd be like, oh, that's a cool story, bro. Like, I'd, support you, but really, I'd be like, nah, mate, what are you talking about? You can't do that when you've fucking been through it yourself. Like, you actually... I have to believe it, because I literally... Oh, and there's 2 other witnesses to it as well. My partner at the time, John, and then my ex-friend, who I could ring up right now. I ain't spoken to her in God knows how long, but I could ring her up right now and say, yo, do you remember that time? And she'd go, yeah, absolutely. So that was a crazy one. And if you want that one, then let me know, and we will feature it in the next video of this series. But... if you liked it, let me know as well, because obviously this is the first video and I'm trying to bring you along as a story. So if you do want it and you would like a series of this, then drop a comment down below. Obviously like the video, because then it sends it out to more people. It lets me know that you like this that sort of content. So I'll put more out and I'll make this a series. So I'll see you in the next episode.